I've seen this beautiful model that they have in Italy called San Patrignano, where there are 2,000 kids.
Yes, there are a lot of aesthetically beautiful things to it. However, I don't want to let that go unchecked because there are so many horrific historical things to it as well. Yeah, so there's a close-up of some leg irons that are being used now. This is not a picture from now. It's and I'm not suggesting anybody's advocating this or that they're doing this now. Hi, everybody. We're doing a little bit of a different episode today. You'll notice that my colleague Whip is not here. He's on a well-deserved Florida vacation, so we'll see him back next time. Today, I'd like to talk about something a little bit different, and not really to try to get into the political realm, and certainly not the political realm of a different country, because I don't want to offend anyone in a different country, because I don't know anything about, I don't know much about politics in Canada, let alone in the U.S. But I wanted to talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And why do you want to talk about him? Well, because he did an interview, which I thought was really interesting, on substance use and substance use policy and his thoughts on that. I thought there was some really original things in there. I learned a lot about him and his own substance use journey, which I thought would be interesting to talk about. So I've prepared a little clip from that interview. And it starts off with an addiction worker who's lost a loved one because of addiction. Her name is Felicia, and she's asking RFK some questions.
We are losing the war on drugs. What policies or ideas do you have that would change that? What's your platform on substance use and overdose? We need help desperately.
Yeah, and I have my own history of addiction. So I was an addict for 14 years, between starting one after my dad died till I was 28 years old, I'm very active in recovery. I go to probably 9 meetings a week, and I spend a lot of my time thinking about it and seeing what works. And I take many people over my 40 years working these programs. I've taken hundreds and hundreds of people into different forms of recovery. And I have a very good idea of what works and a vision for what we need to do in this country. And we need to make addiction treatment easy, simple, cheap. A lot of the industry has devolved because of a variety of factors into almost a predatory industry.
Wow, isn't that amazing? So somebody who's running for president of a major political party that's been in recovery for 40 years. That's a lot. Goes to 9 meetings a week. That's quite a bit. So he's very much engaged in that. I'm going to assume that's AA, or just from the frequency of the meetings, I would think it would almost need to be. So that's a really big thing. So I think that's great. And he's touched on a really important issue. Addiction care needs to be easy, simple, cheap, and yeah, it absolutely needs to be that, right? So, and it isn't. It is the furthest thing from easy, simple, or cheap right now. And he makes the point that it's become almost predatory. And in a lot of ways, sometimes it has. I think there's a little bit more of that south of the border than north of the border. I think our American listeners tend to be a little bit more capitalistic about things, and us in the north tend to be a little bit more government funded. So I don't say one is better than the other, because I would say the Canadian system would be more bureaucratic than the American system. So it's just because the government gets involved in it doesn't mean it makes it more accessible. Time to get into treatment in Canada is significantly longer typically than in the US, where you can get into, there's multiple treatment centers that will take you today if you're paying, or depending on who's paying. So it gets pretty complicated like that. So I agree with him that it has become predatory, and it is something that that we need to look at. Okay, and let's get to the next clip here.
I've seen how it works in other countries. I've seen this beautiful model that they have in Italy called San Patrignano, where there are 2,000 kids. who work on a large farm in a healing center, and they grow.
It's a beautiful model.
It's good, and that's what we need to build here. And what I would do as president is I would decriminalize marijuana. I will make safe banking laws for people who are selling it, but I will tax it federally, and I will use that money to build these healing centers in rural areas, depressed rural areas all over the country, where kids can grow organic food and eat good, eat well, heal themselves spiritually, physically, and emotionally. Our country, has a form of kind of chronic inflammation, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. We need to start healing ourselves, and we need to be compassionate, but we need to be practical about it, and we need to make that a priority. We need to recover our children. We are all, one of my best friends lost a daughter 3 days ago. I lost a niece to a fentanyl overdose during the pandemic. So, I know what it's like. I lost 2 of my brothers. I know what the suffering that American families are enduring, and it is a high priority to me. And it's something that, for me, this is going to be my Peace Corps program. And my uncle had the Peace Corps. I'm going to build these rehab centers all over the country, these farms, healing camps where people can go, where our American children can go and find themselves again and come back, become contributing members to our society, and stop the mayhem and the carnage.
So is it going to be something like long-term recovery being there? And
well, San Patrignano is actually...
Is it going to be federally financed? Yeah, who's paying for...
Oh, like I said, I'm going to decriminalize marijuana on a federal basis, allow the states to regulate it, continue to tax it federally, and use those taxes to fund the recovery programs.
That sounds wonderful, right? Doesn't that sound? That sounds great. On the surface, I got no issues with anything that's said there, and it all makes a lot of sense. And there's no doubt that the person speaking is being forthright, and that's what he believes, and all that sounds very good. But he does mention a place that's a little bit controversial. So San Patrignano. So San Patrignano is a treatment. Commune. It's been called treatment center, treatment organization that was founded in 1978 by Vincenzo Muccelli in Italy. And it has had some controversy. So, and I think it's something that we should discuss a little bit, right? Because this gets into an area where I know that we're struggling with in Canada right now, which is the topic of involuntary care. And involuntary care is basically most treatment care, almost all treatment care is, you voluntarily go in for 14 days, for 28 days, for 60 days, for 90 days, whatever it is. And when you want to leave, you can leave. So involuntary care is something entirely different. Involuntary care is when you are ordered by the state or a family member or I don't know, any number of different scenarios that you can imagine where you're sent to treatment and you can't leave. So that's involuntary care. San Patrignano is very well received by a lot of people. There are countless people that sing the praises of this place. People stay for years. Now, to the critics of it. So kind critics would say that this place has some unconventional treatments, and it doesn't offer any medication such as methadone or any opiate agonist therapies or any medication to help you sleep, anything. That's what the kind critics would say. And there are a lot of, like I say, there's a lot of big fans of it. But there is definitely a darker side of its history that we really can't ignore. I'm going to show some pictures now. As RFK says, it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place, and well, that's a beautiful place. That's a beautiful picture, and from that perspective, it is very beautiful. It's the rolling hills, and this is it's kind of like a community inside a kind of one of the most picturesque places of the world. So it is beautiful for sure. And the people there get to learn trades, which is really helpful. People get jobs out of there. It is truly a community. There's people learning horticulture. And like I say, I think something like 70% of the graduates of the program that successfully complete the program are involved in a trade. So that's wonderful. And that's great. These are pictures put out by the organization themselves, but like I say, there's a lot of fans either way that would post their own pictures of this community and feel very strongly about the work that they do and the importance of that work. They have a vineyard on site, so that's one of the skills, and that's obviously a big trade in Italy. So learning that trade is important. A little questionable teaching people how to make wine while they're in recovery, but still, the graduates speak very highly of it. Now, the next pictures I'm going to show are a little bit darker. They're a lot darker. And so I caution people that how dark they're going to get right now. These pictures look like they're from the 1940s or something. They're not. They're from the 80s and the 90s. And these are leg irons that are being used. So this individual is shackled by his foot to a door, a primitive-looking door in a room. So that's a lot. There's no, I haven't heard anyone disputing these pictures as being factual because they were taken by investigators in the context of a criminal investigation, as there's been lots of activities there. There have been a number of deaths. Vincenzo Muccelli, the founder, was charged with kidnapping, forcing care, abuse, a number of charges, and they had varying results. This gentleman has got, I believe there's a leg iron to his foot, and then his arm is tied up too. Not sure how he goes to the bathroom and does things like that. I don't know. Yeah, so there's a close-up of some leg irons that are being used now. This is not a picture from now. It's and I'm not suggesting anybody's advocating this or that they're doing this now. I would highly doubt that this behavior is being done now. But even though the founder of this organization passed away in 1996, his son Andrea took over in 1996 and ran it up until just a couple years ago. The son describes his father something to the effect of being a saint. So that's So I guess I say that it doesn't seem that it's this history has been disowned or refuted by them in such a way that puts it in context or allows them to move on. And I'm not suggesting, again, I'm playing devil's advocate here in both cases, but this is just so horrible that I think that it must be mentioned, and that's why I'm mentioning it. I don't want to see this organization put onto a pedestal in such a way by such a prominent, respected person without sharing some of this with folks that are seeing this and saying, "Wow, what a wonderful idea! Why don't we just offer people 2 or 3 year care?" And I think that's the tricky part of this, right? Because even Vincenzo, the founder, said at the time there were 300 residents in his care. And he said, if I didn't force them to stay, 250 would not be here. So that's an interesting statement, right? So yes, and I think that's what you see, right? I mean, if you force someone to be there, it doesn't work, right? We know that, and so that's where it gets problematic. So he himself admits that 250 people were forced. I'm not suggesting everyone was in leg irons. I'm sure these are extreme cases, of course. And this gentleman is in a, I don't know. There really isn't words for this type of care. I don't even want to use the word care, and it's very primitive. It just looks so barbaric and inhumane. And to think that people are going for help and that's what they are treated like in any context is just inexcusable, in my opinion. Another gentleman there is behind some chicken wire type accommodation there. There's another guy behind, like, just this, kind of makeshift, kind of looks like some concrete building ties and some, I don't know, some cage for animal cage wire, and he's just there. He's just there. And so a lot of this is based on a series put out by Netflix, which I really recommend people check out for themselves. Don't take my word for any of this, but and I'm not saying you should take Netflix word for any of this, although it is a pretty comprehensive 5-part series, 5 hours of interviews, including you can hear from the founder himself, you can hear from the. You can hear from his son. You can hear from many people in the community, many people that work there, and it's real. So I guess maybe going over the basics would be valuable, and I don't know how to frame what we just saw in a way, but I can talk a little bit about why involuntary care is not something that we endorse in the addiction community. I mean, if it isn't obvious, but to some people it isn't. So, I mean, I think there's medical ethics to this, right? Because I don't think you have to respect people's autonomy, right? Forcing someone is a violation of their autonomy and of their personal freedom, and of the law in most countries. I think. Notwithstanding, like the Mental Health Act, where a psychiatrist can put a hold on people. I mean, there are certain situations that people are placed in care, but not placed in addiction care by force, right? So they are placed in psychiatric care, which indirectly may give them a break from their substances, if nothing else. But we don't call that addiction care, right? It's not treatment. So the other reason that we don't do it is because it doesn't work. There are countless studies that if somebody is brought to something, if someone is forced to do something, they won't do it. It will not work. Hesitate to ever endorse anything that didn't work, right? So it doesn't work, right? It may work for some people, but treatment that people voluntarily go to works much better than treatment that they are forced to go. So that's something that we absolutely know to be a fact. So another big reason why we wouldn't do this is just for the potential of abuse, because who is the gatekeeper of that person, right? I mean, where do we draw the line on who decides? Okay, so somebody's had some drinking problems, maybe they had a DUI, and all right, let's give them 6 months, 6 months in a treatment center, right? I mean, I just couldn't imagine. I'm not suggesting that they shouldn't have a punishment for what they did, but the punishment shouldn't be forced into healthcare, right? Because that just makes healthcare the enemy, and healthcare is not meant to be a prison, right? So I think that's, and I think it ultimately may lead to sort of a slippery slope of what happens, and that's not where do you draw the line when I say slippery slope, right? So is it and again it's if it's just some subjective thing as to what one person's problem is and what another person's problem is, it's yeah. The other thing is the pure mental health impact. I mean, we know about PTSD just for some very simple experiences that people have in their life and the consequences for it. Can you imagine being forced into care? The trauma associated with that would be just off the charts, I think. And again, it's just a matter of this is a pretty complex. It's a pretty complex issue. Detaining people against their will, even if the intention is to provide treatment. Now, I am not suggesting in any way that RFK is supporting or any of this. Okay, I don't think that he is at all. I don't think anybody in any I can't. Any responsible person would ever suggest this. And normally, from some of the things that I've watched, he seems to be very well read and very well researched on these things. So, and this was just one answer. So who knows? But so I think it is important when he, is on such a national stage and saying, San Patrignano is a beautiful place. Well, yes, there are a lot of aesthetically beautiful things to it. However, I don't want to let that go unchecked, because there are so many horrific historical things to it as well. And I just wanted to elevate that. As far as his views on decriminalization, I think that's absolutely. I mean, I don't think putting people in jail for cannabis use is, it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. I think the evidence is such that you don't go all the way to the Canadian model where you've got a cannabis store on every street corner. The evidence suggests decriminalizing it, but not legalizing it, right? So not making it like available in vending machines, for example, right? So you want to get somewhere in the middle. I think that's where the evidence shows it, and because cannabis is not a benign substance that has no consequences. We know there are a lot of consequences for folks, and there's a lot of complications for a lot of young people's mental health in particular that are experiencing with cannabis. So yeah, that's. I just wanted to kind of put that out there, and I think that this is having someone on a national stage bringing up recovery subjects. Wow, isn't that amazing? I know you guys have had people in office before. I think of the younger George Bush. I think he had a drinking and cocaine problem when he was younger, not quite as recovery orientated, but he found sobriety, and so that's good. But I don't think he elevated it in the way that RFK is suggesting to elevate it. And that's all I wanted to say. So thanks for checking us out. Okay, take care.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, please feel free to like and subscribe. That way you'll get notified when we come out with new content. We try to come out with new content about every week or so. So anyway, thanks again, and see you soon.